Hello, Flosstube. My name is Susan Standley, and I am not new to YouTube, but I'm definitely new to Flosstube. I've become caught up in watching all these fantastic Flosstube videos and traveling the world, really, in this time where we can't get out of our homes. I've been to the Netherlands with modern folk embroidery. I've been to the UK with Hands Across the Sea. I've been to Australia with Nikki Noodle. I've been to Canada with Ellen's Maximum Cross Stitch Power Hour. And I've been all across the United States. I think I started when somebody suggested Brenda and the Cereal Starter, and I've just enjoyed every minute of it. And I think I have this high need to talk, so here I am. I'm just talking, and if anybody's interested, I'd love to chat with you back and forth about the things that make my heart sing. Mostly I have been a collector of antique samplers and a quilt maker. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. That's just how I've operated for so many years. I have done cross stitch, and now I feel like cross stitch is calling my heart. And I've also been an avid student of history and textile history and history of quilts, and of course now with my antique samplers I'm always very interested in finding out their history, and then lo and behold I see that there are people in the world who also love to study that as well. And so I just feel like I've found a little niche in my world, in my life, and I hope that you'll indulge me, and if you're interested I hope you'll hang along and join me. I also love studying sewing notions. I love collecting sewing notions. So I'm hoping to just share some of the things that I learn along the way and some of my projects and progress, and connect with some of you. I can't tell you how much joy it has brought me to listen to you. It's like having a stitch group in my home, which I have sorely missed this last year. So anyway, I have been keeping record of my progress in this quilt diary, but now I see that there are stitch diaries out there, but this has served me well, and it keeps me accountable because I tend to be a little bit all over the map. This just helps me keep track of what I've done. And I haven't gotten into the sticker thing yet, but that looks like a lot of fun as well. So I'll just show you some of the things that I have in progress and some of the things that I've collected. Maybe I'll share later, but anyway. The project that kind of brought me back, and I've been using these bags for my quilting and for my applique, and they just work really well. I think Nicole's Needlework uses these, and anyway, they work really well. So the project that kind of got me committed this year, it was the beautiful sampler that GGR reproduced, and that was going to benefit charity. And it's called Julia L Fooks, 1869. I'm sure others of you are working on it. It's done in a beautiful raspberry color on a very rustic thread, linen, excuse me. And I have to say I'm a much faster quilter than I am cross stitcher. I am so slow, painfully slow, but I'm working on it. And of course my first project I was off by a thread. Anyway, so this is how far I've gotten. This is on butternut 36 count by Seraphim, and it's a very slubby linen, and so that's been part of my problem, is I've missed some stitches because behind a slub is this hair-sized thread. And so a couple times I caught 3 instead of 2, and it's 2/2 with a silk thread. You all are so much better at this than me. Dinky dyes, and the color is Rose Bay. It's beautiful. I'm enjoying the warmth of the butternut linen. It's different and probably not classic. I don't see a lot of people using it, but I'm really enjoying it. Anyway, this is the red thread that I stitched down to see where I was off. I just pulled it out. It just accidentally pulled out when I pulled this. Anyway, I know I'm off, and I'll fix it. I think instead of ripping the whole bottom border off, I'm going to be creative. Take some creative license. In quilting, I know a lot of you are quilters, but in quilting, there's a common thought, and I think it started in the Amish community, that no quilt should be perfect because only God in heaven is perfect and nothing on this earth can be perfect. And so they would intentionally make an error. Well, I never have to intentionally make an error in any project I do. They just come naturally. So, all right, that's the first project. I think you can still get this if you're interested. It was a downloadable pattern, and I believe GGR and Needlewrk Press were in some kind of a partnership on it. And if I get really fancy and can do some links below, I'll try to research that and make sure that you can find it if you're interested. So that's kind of what brought me back. And then I started digging through my supplies, which is not always, it's, you know, I've done a lot of cleaning and purging during this time, and I'm sure many of you have as well. Anyway, I found some projects that have just been so lonely in there for so many years. And this project I purchased this several years ago when I lived in Arizona. Ooh, that's really bad glare. It's called Anne Robinson 1800, and like I said, I'm drawn to antique and very primitive, kind of cruel. I don't know. I don't know exactly why something hits me, but this one hit me because of the kind of naive nature to it and the dark background linen, and just, I don't know, it just sung to me. It's a pattern by the Traveling Stitcher, and I pulled it out after probably a lot of years, and all I have done so far is that little line. But it's 1/2, and it's so delicate and beautiful. I do need magnifiers to do this now. When I started it a long time ago, I could see it without that. But anyway, I love this color linen. It's a Weeks Dye Works. It's the old Weeks, and I know that a lot of people like the denser weave, the little tighter new Weeks, but this fits my primitive, antique, I don't know, love. Here are the threads. So it's just very antique and rustic looking. And you almost don't even know that this is in there. Just pops up. So that's kind of another project I'm working on, and I'm really hoping I don't get too crazy and start a million projects, but it's really hard when I watch all of your videos and then go online, because there's so much fabulous stuff out there I had no idea was out there. because I've been super busy with a lot of, with life and doing other things. So the next one I purchased since this new start in my life is Anne Gott 1848, and I purchased this through Attic Needleworks in Phoenix, Arizona, and I used to live in Tucson, and I was very familiar with the shop. I went there and I did purchase several charts because, why not? They're just gorgeous designs. How can you not purchase them even if you don't touch them for years? But they're there, and that's the beauty. And the wonderful thing about cross stitch I'm finding is a lot of patterns stick around a long time. Quilt patterns seem to turn over quite frequently, but so this one is so beautiful. I just had to start it as soon as it came. It's just this delicate, almost lace-like stitch. And I got the classic Colorworks, so it's in cotton. And it just has that same kind of rustic antique-y feel that I really like, but of course it has pops of red. I do seem to be quite drawn to the Needlewrk Press designs. They make my heart sing, and I love them. So anyway, this is one thread over two, and it's just really delicate, and I'm really enjoying this. So I've got a lot going already, and I've just barely gotten back into it. So anyway, love that one. And then, of course, because I'm just craving the connection and loving everything about everything in the cross stitch world right now, I joined the Orange Coast Sampler Guild, and it's a lovely group of sampler makers, and I'm just getting to know them. I went on my first Zoom meeting, and it was delightful. But I signed up for a little workshop that they're having to make this beautiful sewing set, and I'll show you. It came all wrapped beautifully, and I don't know if you can see the patina on this wood, but it's really nice. So I do collect antique needlework tools and things, so this it's not antique, but it's going to be an heirloom, I think, in my life, I hope. So anyway, so that was interesting because when that kit came, it came with this linen that I have not used before, and you are to stitch 1 over 1, and I have to tell you, I struggled like crazy. The threads kept slipping, but I don't know if you can see that. I'm almost done with that medallion. I used the wrong color in the middle. Of course, I don't know if I'm going to unpick it. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I've done a lot of restitching, going back and fixing things. That's all part of the process, though. It is in quilting too, so anyway, I'm really enjoying comparing. I love to study time periods, so I've mostly done my studying, my self-study. I'm not a historian by trade or a textile historian, but I kind of wish I had been. I love it. I knew I had found a niche when I listened to Jacob on Modern Folk Embroidery, and he was talking about the sleeve and the costume of the motifs in his pattern that I downloaded and I didn't bring with me, but I'll show you in a future video that I'm starting, because when I quilt, I've taught quilt classes, I love to research the history of the fabrics and the dyes and the patterns on the fabric, and get to know where they were used elsewhere in the world besides in the quilt or in the fabric. Usually it was for clothing, sometimes it was for interior design, wallpaper, on china, you name it. Well, there are a lot of similar motifs in cross stitch and quilting, and I'm really excited to do some study and understand the mindset of different time periods and why things were done the way they were done. The Schoolgirl samplers are so sweet to me because they're so young, these young children. And I have a few, and I want to share my antiques with you. And I'm learning how to chart them. I might end up charting them and at some point, but I'm just amazed. I'm amazed at the focus and the attention to detail of these young people in the earlier century. But it was, you know, people are the same, but they're also different. And the mindset and the way of life was different, and it's reflected in the work that was done by children and adults as well. So quilt samplers were, you know, sampler is not just a word used for cross stitch. Sampler in my mind means a sampling of different stitches, different motifs. Kind of like when you go to a restaurant, you get a sampler platter, you get a collection of a variety of different foods. So quilts, same thing. I have a few quilts that I'll show you. I'll show you them. I'll do a little clip and pop them in here. There's one quilt that I was bound and determined to make in my lifetime, and it's a quilt called Dear Jane, and it is a true sampler. Samplers were really popular in quilting in the 1850s, around that time period. This one was made during the Civil War era in America, 1861 to 64. Anyway, this was a long project and a long process, but each block is a different technique and a different motif, and so therefore you get the idea. All right, so that was one that I made, and another one that I love is from this book, Hope's Journey. Betsy Chutchian is a good friend of mine. I'll show a picture of that quilt down below. Or in a minute, because it's also a sampler, and each block has a significance and a meaning. And then this is a new Schoolgirl sampler quilt that just came out. So I am intrigued when I find quilts and cross stitch that share colors or motifs, images, and it just makes me curious as to why. One of my very favorite quilts that I believe was based on an antique cross stitch sampler is this quilt by a woman named Di Ford, and I'm sure many of you will know it. She has unfortunately passed away, but let this look. The center motif is that really classic sampler image of a man and woman, a house, and some sheep. And this one also has an oversized urn. And so, of course, that got me really curious about samplers with sheep. And there are a lot out there, and I want to make them all. Anyway, but I'm trying to be a little bit self-controlled. I don't know if that's possible. So for the quilt world, samplers were sometimes for blocks were exchanged as a means of friendship and sharing. In the cross stitch world, from what I can tell, these young people were learning to stitch. Sometimes, especially for the young girls, this was their way of learning to make their letters and learning to read. So anyway, I'm excited to explore the history and learn a little bit more, and I'm sure many of you know all this and could tell me, but anyway, I have two other books I want to share with you that I think are really, really interesting. Most of my textile and history of quilt study has been in the Americas, some in the UK, as far as the historical nature of quilts, and samplers I'm finding along with quilts are worldwide from that time period, from the 1700s and 1800s. And I'm fascinated by the discipline of the sampler for a young person. And anyway, so because of my interest in history, I've had books in my collection that now have become kind of new to me. And this book I think is wonderful, and if you are a sampler lover, it might be something you'd like to add to your collection. It's called Women's Work, Embroidery in Colonial Boston, and it just has yummy, yummy needlework, images that you know are in samplers that are available to purchase, clothing items, a stomacher with some crewel work, just beautiful. I love the quality of detail, and there was no glue, there was nothing, no special tools. This was just all hand with maybe linen thread, maybe silk thread, later on cotton thread. I've done a little bit of research on thread. I'd love to share with you. I think thread's pretty amazing. Beautiful images. And then, of course, some gorgeous, I don't know if you'd call these samplers, but pictorial images. Of course, there's those beautiful sheep again. I like sheep, so it doesn't bother me when they pop up. I do have, of course, the classic Adam and Eve sampler. So this is a lovely book, and I think if you are interested in knowing a little more of the history of your works that you're doing, it might be fun to have. It is Embroidery in Colonial Boston, and it is by Pamela A. Parmel, and I'll link that below if you're interested. And then the other one I have that I find fascinating is Connecticut Needlework. And I think I just looked at a pattern today with, well, I don't know if it was a bee skeep or a beehive, but anyway, just classic images. Some more clothing with crewel work. I find the costuming of the day really interesting as well, and I'd love to talk about that. Gorgeous. So I guess you can see why I'm drawn to these dark colors. My antique samplers are, they're not super high end. I do have one really nice one, but they're, they're 200 years old, sometimes 100 years old. They're old. They are discolored. They're dark. So I kind of want my new work to complement my old collection. And there's that alphabet. Here's another one I love. Love the house. Such a central theme. And then some stump work, I think. No, not stump work. Candle wicking. Sorry. I find it all fascinating. Anyway, I recommend this book as well. This is produced by the Connecticut Historical Society. Susan Schoelwer is the author. It's a great book. So recently I had the opportunity or the experience of going down to San Diego to help my parents who are elderly and have had to move. And I couldn't connect my phone to the Wi-Fi on the plane, so I couldn't watch a movie. It's only a 2-hour flight from Seattle. I live in Seattle, Washington. And so I just, really the only thing, I didn't have a pen or pencil. I was in bad shape. I was ill prepared. It was kind of a last minute trip. And all I could do was type in notes on my phone. And so I started typing notes, just things, thoughts. I'm a list maker. I make lists of things I need to do. Anyway, so I was thinking about this stitch world that I'm involved in or that I'm a part of, and I was thinking about my needle and how much a simple thing like a needle and thread has brought me so much comfort this year. And I'm wondering, I'm sure if you're a needle worker, you have these same thoughts and feelings that your needle is, it's a comfort. And so then I just started listing all the things that the needle does for me. And the needle calms me. It's meditative. It's almost like breathing. If I'm having a bad day, just doing a bit of needlework just really refocuses me. It's a creative force for stimulating thoughts. It inspires me. It gives me a place to have a new beginning. It also gives me a sense of completion when I complete a project. It's a way of expressing myself, and I really hung on that thought because I think these samplers were a way for these young people and older people who did beautiful stitchery. It was a way to express yourself. Maybe pen and paper wasn't as available, but you could express your thoughts and feelings with a needle and thread. It's a therapeutic tool, a needle for me for sure. And I just mean stitching with the needle. It connects me to the past, and it also gives me a voice for the future. And I'm trying to write down and document things that I'm thinking while I'm stitching, or why I picked a certain project and what's going on. I'm hoping that it acknowledges my existence after I'm gone. And so many of these samplers have messages on them about the timeless, that life is short and we're not here that long. And they were very aware of that. And I think sometimes, I'm probably going to leave a lot of half-finished projects behind. But anyway, and so it gives me hope. And I'm just so grateful, really, for this community. you know, just being brave enough to get out there and put yourself on YouTube and connect with people. I did also come back from that trip to find a post on the internet from, I believe, Needlework Press. Could have been someone else, but I know she commented on it as well. And she was talking about the Festival of the Broken Needle. And it's Harikuyo. It's a festival in Japan, and I believe it was on February 9th. It was celebrated on February 9th. It's a 400-year-old tradition that pays homage to the humble needle. And I thought, you know, the needle is humble, but it's also hugely significant. It was a way before mechanization to create clothing. It was a way to express yourself. It was a way to produce beauty. And so they put the broken needles and broken pins into a piece of tofu so that they can rest, and they are thanked for their service. I thought it was charming and very much bringing people back down to their roots and to the foundation of life. Just a simple thing like a needle, which in early days was a necessity. And I have done a tiny bit of research on needles, and I do collect antique needle books and whatnot, and I'm hoping to show that to you at some point. But the very simple thing is also a huge necessity. And for me right now, during these times, it's definitely a necessity. But needles appear in ancient literature as one of the first tools, possibly from things that I've read. And I'm not an expert. I'm just a novice, just a self-learner, and I love sharing it. So in the 1600s, they were made by blacksmiths, and they were crude. They were pounded out of wire, and then the eye of the needle was punched out, and so it was very rough, and I'm sure the threads broke like crazy. They were treasured and very rare. And according to what I read, the wire that was used to develop the needles in the 1600s came from Redditch, England in 1639. Now, that's not the first needle that was ever used. Needles were made from yucca plants. Indigenous peoples all over the world have used bone, yucca plants, spikes off of cactus, and all kinds of things to make needles. So there's a lot more. There's a lot more to it. But by the 18th century, these wire needles in Redditch were being produced at the rate of about 1 million a year, which is, for that time period, that's a lot of needles. The colonies in America wanted to resist foreign goods to show their independence from needing to rely on foreign production. And so in 1775, a gentleman named John White in Salem, Massachusetts, he was bound for England. Oh, I'm sorry. He began producing needles. And by 1824, 5 million needles were made by hand per week. And 50 million, oh, okay. So by 1824, the hand-hewn needles in Redditch were made at the rate of 5 million per week. By 1847, John White in Salem, Massachusetts was making 50 million needles per week because they were machined. and this is kind of the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the United States. And by the 1900s, everyone had a needle. They were a necessity. Now, early on, needles were rare, and sometimes a community, a small group of homes would share a needle. They just weren't as plentiful. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. It made me, again, go back and appreciate the simple things. And anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope to make progress on my samplers, and I will continue to share videos with you of my progress just for my own documentation, and also it keeps me accountable. And hopefully I'll share some history of notions and some of the things in my collection as well. So anyway, thank you for joining, and take care, be well, and enjoy your stitching. Keep posting videos or enjoying videos. All right.